Okay, good evening, everyone. We might start with our housekeeping while we're waiting for our latecomers to join us. So welcome. Welcome to those who are in lockdown, and more exciting, those who might have survived an earthquake this week. So we certainly we aren't short of things to keep us occupied and interested, and I guess a bit of change up in our media headlines is sometimes a good thing. So welcome. Tonight is Fodder Forum number 4, and we're very excited to have a number of guest speakers joining us tonight to talk about not only automation, but I guess some of the interesting things in the pipeline coming towards our industry. So we're looking forward to our guest and international speakers who are with us this evening. So we're going to kick off first of all tonight hearing from Professor David Lamb, who is the new-ish Chief Scientist at the Food Agility CRC, as we often say in the business. For those not familiar with CRCs, it stands for Cooperative Research Centre, a federal government initiative, which I'm going to say off the top of my head has been around for about 20 years. I could be wrong on that, but long time ago I was an employee of one. And I guess initially they were set up to bring together different research groups in Australia because the government was trying to strive for a bit more collaboration around central themes rather than have all our different scientific groups in Australia doing the same thing and sometimes competing against each other. These days, CRCs not only include research groups, but often include commercial partners in them as well. So welcome, David. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And David's actually based at UNE, the University of New England in Armidale. After David, we're going to hear from our friends at New Holland, and I'll come back to them, but I'm very excited to say that we have some people not based in Australia tonight joining us, so that's very exciting. Each forum runs for about 100 minutes in length. To let you all know that the forum is being recorded, so for those that have missed some, they are now on our website for people to go and have a look at after the event. Most people when you come in should be on mute, so if you're not, you may just want to check that, and we will have questions at the end of each speaker session. Thanks, Prue. Those that have joined us before are very familiar with this control bar now, but we'd love it if you've turned your camera off and have a question. If you could turn it on when you ask your question so that we can see you. Also take yourself off mute. It'd be great if you could tell us who you are and where you're based also. When we come to questions, you do have a little digital hand, for want of better words, on your control bar to use. Alternatively, wave furiously at us and we will see you and direct the question to you. Thanks, Prue. Yes, and just a reminder, it'd be great. We'd love to see you, and if you can tell us who you are and where you're from, that's fantastic. So with that, I'll hand over to David to kick us off.
Look, thank you all. First of all, thank you, Paula, for the original invitation, and obviously to you, the AFIA, and New Holland, I guess, for the opportunity to speak. If you do struggle with Teams, I chair a lot of Teams meetings, and I always find it's useful to bring your own hand icon if you need it. And of course, the other most important one is this one. And I fall foul of that all the time. So anyway, let me just start by sharing screens with you. Okay, we've got that clear there. Can you see me? Thanks, Paul. Okay, so, you know, when it comes to talking about automation and what's coming our way, it's really easy to slip in to talk about the tech. And I'm a physicist by trade, and I'll certainly default to that setting. But I thought I might also cover off on a few other things coming our way as well. So I thought we'd talk about the notion of towards hands-free farming. And I use the words hands-free almost interchangeably with autonomy, because we've come a long way even in doing things or having machinery assist us in doing things, let alone having them do everything for us from end to end. So first of all, I'm going to just share a couple of clips with you. Now, these are the results of trials that I've been involved in over a number of years. So one of the soft targets for automation is obviously the drone. And the notion of us being able to conduct our day-to-day farming work and have a drone buzz around overhead using the latest in positioning and guidance technologies, in this case satellite-based global navigation satellite system type approaches, you know, that's obviously something that we all get a fairly clear idea about the future of. Of course, the other one is getting out of the tractor cab and letting a machine do it. And we're not talking about bespoke built robots. We're talking about retrofitting existing machines with existing auto steer systems to allow them to get on and do the job for us. I guess my favourite, and in the spirit of the actual call out to this forum today, which was grab a cold beer, is a notion that, you know, you can still spend the day on a machine, and but at the end of the day, you know, you can get out of the damn thing, hit a button, and just let it get on with the rest of the day's work, or in this case, a night's work. And all of these are actual trials. They're using existing off-the-shelf technologies with some add-ons. So really, you know, these are the sorts of things that we're striving for. This is the stuff that captures our imagination and appeals to us when we have to manage the safety and workflow and complexities of our farming operations. So whilst I have some examples in relation to fodder production, I'm going to draw from experiences and insights from a whole range of agriculture-related industries to think a little bit more about the things that are coming our way, and not just the tech, but that is clearly a key part of it. The roads to hands-free farming actually has many lanes. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, there is the technology lane. There is the regulatory lane. There is the farming lane. And what I mean by the farming lane is really the question is, are our farms robotics ready? And then there's the often ignored or just simply often not considered issue of the social lane. You know, we know the challenges about the right to farming as it is. Is there going to be challenges around the rights to hand-free farming? So hopefully a couple of my comments might spur some thoughts on your side, and I'd love to hear from you about these at the end of the presentation. So let's get to the easy stuff, the enabling technology. And Bruno gave a great presentation last week, Bruno from Kuhn, and identified the very clear and obvious trend globally that robotics technology is growing 30% compound annual growth consistently year on year. And you don't have to look far, and including our friends at New Holland, to see that just about every machinery manufacturer's product development roadmap includes some form of automated system or autonomous system robotic system. And it's not just the providers, the developers of agricultural machinery moving forward into the future, but we've got a whole ecosystem of tech developers crashing and cashing in, developing bespoke products from the ground up and then offering them into the marketplace, or in many cases offering them to buyout pathways with some of the existing machinery manufacturers. So the technology is growing and coming into our sphere at a rate of knots. The other comment that I thought Bruno made that was really interesting last week, and I just want to build on a little bit, is the notion of the role of telecommunications. Now, the Australian Broadband Advisory Council convened an agri-tech expert working group that spent the last 12 months looking at the issues of telecommunications in terms of our ag innovation future. And their report was released just a couple of months back. And the question they asked the industry was, is there a connectivity threshold in our agri-food sector where connectivity becomes an enabler of digital agriculture rather than a drag on it? That was a question. And when they defined the threshold, one of the two definitions of the threshold was most important to us, is that threshold is when reliable connectivity across paddocks is sufficient to use connected machinery and sensors, I read robotics, for example, which can vary from narrowband to broadband, depending on how bandwidth intensive the apps are. So there's the threshold. After 1 year of surveying across a whole gamut of Australia's agri-food sector, the conclusion was that so far in Australia, we have not consistently or reliably crossed that threshold. So at the moment, and Bruno is dead on track, telecommunications is holding us back. Now, interestingly, about 4 years ago, I conducted a national review of telecommunications and agriculture for the then 13 research development corporations. Every one of them got together and backed this work. And one of the things I was looking at was, well, what is the telecommunications? So what's out there? So I did a simple desktop exercise. On the left is a map of Australia with every piece of mobile infrastructure on the ground located. And also I have got, with the exception of Victoria and southern Western Australia and Tasmania, because I couldn't get the data quick enough, I've got a map of all the property boundaries. So pretty well the top 2/3 of Australia. When you intersect those property boundaries with, that is rural property, farm boundaries, over 10 hectares with all of the infrastructure, 2/3 of Australian rural properties are have infrastructure within 10 kilometres of their property boundaries. So why aren't we switching it on? It may not be mobile phone towers, it may be digital concentrators or other forms of backhaul infrastructure. But we have infrastructure in the ground that is in relatively close proximity to all of the properties in this particular subset. 95% of our properties are within 30 kilometres of some sort of infrastructure. So the point I'm making here is telecommunications is a challenge, but given those ranges between our properties and infrastructure, there are opportunities for our telecommunications sector to innovate, to give us the telecommunications solutions we need. And I don't just mean the big telcos, I mean second tier telco providers. You know, long range Wi-Fi, LoRaWAN, that is long range low bandwidth providers. And also, dare I say it, but farmer-owned, producer-owned local cells, you know, ecospheres as we call them. So there is opportunity out there, but there's still a gap, and we know how big it is. Another component of the enabling technologies is analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Now, like our robotics friends, the growth in AI software worldwide is 54% year on year, and it's been doing it continuously since last year and forecast to do so to 2025. Now, whenever I think of artificial intelligence, I think of a comment my father made, 11 years ago. When I told him that I was working in an area that was related to artificial intelligence, he said, well, artificial intelligence is really no substitute for natural stupidity. The point he was trying to make, and I really had to think about it to realise it, the point he was making is that there is so much about when we produce things on our farms that come from not only our instinct, but our experience. And can a machine pick up on a lifetime of experience and the legacy of knowledge passed on from our fathers, our mothers, and our grandparents and so forth? So if we look at the applications of analytics, machine learning and data to situational awareness, and I talk about people, at the end of the day, we can generate data into a smart farm like the one I built here in the New England from a whole range of sources. And at the end of the day, you're dealing with us, our neck-top computer, to aggregate that data. And there are companies, for example, startups like Pear Tree Intelligence, my good friend and colleague Hamish Munro, that are offering intelligence services to producers that have got data coming in from a whole range of things. And so there are products and services out there that will help us aggregate the multitude of data flowing in to help us make decisions. But there's a catch. What people don't realise, and what myself and many of my colleagues have grown to realise over time, is that the notion of digital decision making, analytics, machine learning, AI, doing it all, bring the data in, make the decision, is actually being eroded. We can understand that the producers that are at the very lagging end, the laggards, in terms of the adoption of innovation profile that we always talk about, we can understand that they're reluctant to take on these sort of digital decision-making tools because, you know, they're not confident. They may not have digital literacy, the required digital literacy and so forth, and the social support networks, the professional support networks. We get that on the left. But what we're increasingly discovering is that the innovator class are also eroding it. Why? Because they're the ones that have got an appetite for the technology, they've got an appetite for the data, and the minute you provide them with a black box calculator to give them a solution and say, go left or go right, the first thing they want to do is to see the calculations. They want to see the data coming in. So we end up back where Hamish is on the left here, where our innovator class often actually want to process it all themselves because they understand where the data is coming from, and but they don't quite go as far as trusting the hands-free machine learning analytics type approach. But of course, the stuff that's a lot safer and that seems to be moving forward at a rate of knots is when you're applying analytics to, for example, robotic systems around actuation and control. And that includes sensory control. So for example, you know, when a machine picks up a piece of fruit, or a machine is moving around a paddock and it needs to know where the boundaries are or where the roads are, for example. But also we're seeing new opportunities arise around human-machine interaction. So clearly wearable robotics, okay, that's interesting because we see wearable robotics emerging in the health sector, you know, recovering from spinal injuries, for example, but now being touted as a pathway to assisting in field operations. But when you look at the real emphasis on human-machine interactions analytics at the moment, it really is around that collaborative robot space where robots are working side by side with humans, and so they need to understand where they are, where the humans are, where the boundaries are. Cybersecurity is another part of the key enabling technologies. Now that is the glass jaw of this technology laneway, because cybersecurity, we talk about it a lot. And indeed, just recently, back in June, the AgriFutures released a report understanding and unpicking the threat-based assessment to cybersecurity resilience of our agriculture sector. And when you read the report, it's all around our autonomous systems. And, you know, I would give the award for the understatement of the year to the report writers who said it's not always easy to spot and respond to cyber vulnerabilities when adopting new digital technologies. Absolutely, it isn't. We've only got to hark back to the malware attack that shut down Australia, New Zealand wool sales last year and the recent JBS shutdown, the meat processor. And when you consider that our robotics future and indeed our smart farm future is run by technology systems and data, simple things like lighting and temperature control, feed rations to intensive livestock producers, auto steer tractors if you're into forage production, self-controlled irrigators, you know, these are all open slather to our to malfeasance in that other world that wants to play games with our hardware. And you've only got to remember that a casino was hacked and the high roller database was downloaded by a bunch of hackers who got into the casino through the internet connected fish tank thermometer, right? So this stuff is doable. What have you got at home that is anywhere remotely near connected to your business systems? Let's hope you don't have internet controlled fish tanks. And if you look at that example with the pivot irrigator on the right, things can go wrong. Pivots can start walking, different motors can start going in different directions, and all of a sudden you've got machinery damage and loss, and or worst case scenario, human life lost or threatened at the very least. So cybersecurity needs work. There's a lot of expertise out there, but it's not facing agriculture, but it's talking about it. We need to get them activated. The regulatory laneway is another one that's just coming to a head. Just recently, the Grain Producers Australia, the Tractor Manufacturers Australia Association and the Society for Precision Ag released their draft code of practice for effectively autonomous systems in farming. For anyone that sells, designs, purchases or uses mobile ag machinery with autonomous functions, it applies to you. It details risk management approaches, hazard controls, operational management, relevant standards and legislative procedures. The important thing to note is once this code of practice gets the endorsement of government, you have to bear in mind codes of practice are admissible in court proceedings. So if you fall foul, if something unfortunate happens to you or yours, or on your property or in your business that involves this equipment, this code of practice can be used as an instrument to judge you by and to even judge an outcome by. So I would strongly recommend that if you're considering an autonomous systems future on your farm, get across that code of practice. Now, the third laneway was the notion of farming. Are our farms actually robotic ready? Now, when you talk about robotics farming and Holy Grail, it's hard to go by the notion of a robotic sheep shearing device. And that's been sort of the Holy Grail, the aspirational target of engineers, scientists, and obviously our livestock producing peak bodies and our producers for many years, because shearers are hard to come by. And in fact, the University of Technology of Sydney, which is a partner organisation to our CRC, has been doing a lot of work in their robotics labs about generating a robot capable of shearing a sheep. Now, interestingly, when I visited this team about 2 years ago, I asked the chief engineer to describe for me the perfect sheep when it comes to devising a robotic shearing device. And once I jotted down the description, the closest thing I could come to rendering that description up was a sheep that looks like that. And this really raises an interesting point, is you can build and develop and deploy robots to suit our current system, or you can take our current system and change it. But I don't think we'll be seeing sheep like that anytime soon. But we do have a track record, because we have bred, for example, sheep to knock out wrinkles to assist in shearing. You only have to look at our orchard industries, our summer fruit industries, for example. Apple orchards are being totally re-engineered to make them amenable to robotic harvesting. Absolutely. And of course, in the forage industry, fodder crops, we've got beautiful landscapes which are potentially directly amenable to the deployment of robotic solutions, because we've got clear land, large-scale production systems. But we've learnt a lot, even when presented with that wonderful landscape, from our auto steer experiences. That is human and machines working side by side. Because our farms may be ready, but are we? And so I go back to my father's original comment and just want to rephrase it. Is artificial intelligence a substitute for natural stupidity? Because even when you've got systems running with human sub-control, you can still drive an auto steer tractor into a dam. And I can tell you that according to Ergon Energy, which is a Queensland energy provider, the second largest cause of power pole or power pylon damage is auto steer tractors going straight into the side of them, so we know where to find them. So, you know, we have to think about whether or not we're ready for it, or what we need to think about to be ready for it. The fourth laneway is social. You know, we've heard a lot of difficult experiences in the last 5 years, which have with people questioning our right to farm. And when it comes to the introduction of autonomy and robotic systems into our production systems, never underestimate the power of human touch, because from a social side, the human face is a powerful marketing tool when it comes to provenance and credentials. And when it comes to, for example, healthy, locally sourced vegetables, nutritious diets, does this image of our vegetable producing future convey the same emotion in our clients? So, you know, that is a social pathway that we need to give some thought about. But in fact, it's probably a little more acute in terms of the challenge we face, because whilst robotic crop production may not be so much of a problem for the right to farm in crop production, it could be very emotive and evocative when animals are interacting with machines. Because, you know, look at our shearing industry. We have highly skilled, professional, highly ethical, highly empathetic people in our shearing industry. Right? That is part and parcel of why we can sustain and continue to sell that practice to our consumers. You start bringing machines into the question and we suddenly have an extra difficulty. And of course, there are the unforeseen environmental interactions. Right? We all saw the news story 2 nights ago when the coffee delivering drone in Canberra got attacked by a raven because it was nesting just down the road. They shut down the drone operation, they deployed ornithologists, and it got national attention. It could be a robotic forage harvester going straight through a plover's nest, or over, God help us, a rabbit burrow, or through a fox. You wouldn't know. But remember, we are dealing with the perception as much as anything, and that can be a key influencer. So when I look at the road to hands-free farming, I guess to end the thought provocation, I would suggest that the technology lane is a fast lane. We've got technology there. There's a little bit there of argy-bargy to do with around data and most importantly, as Bruno raised last week, the trust that goes with sharing of data and interoperability of data. But that's a fast lane as far as I can see at the moment. The regulatory lane is a slow lane, but if there's one thing the introduction of drones taught us 10 years ago, is that you need to get ahead of the curve. Drones appeared in society, in agriculture, well before we had the regulatory frameworks to control it. Thanks to, for example, the Society for Precision Ag, Grain Producers Australia and Tractor Manufacturing Association, we now have a draft set of guidelines, even before the technology and hardware is widely commercially available. That's a good thing. But still, it's a slow process to get these things in place. Are our farmers robotics ready? I say yes, more or less. But are our drivers robotics ready? You know, how we interact with them, how we bring them into our safety and workflow processes, how we ensure they're working properly. And the one that I think is the pothole lane is the social one. Now, think of a pothole lane. You whip out of it because no one's driving in it. You use it to get around the slow goers and you go fully hard as you can until you hit a pothole you didn't see. And then you come a gutser. That's the social one that I brand. So I think we have to be particularly vigilant, particularly careful and particularly sensitive about the sorts of signals we need to address when we introduce it into our industry. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave, for that. That was very good. And I must say I did smile. I was aware of the Raven attacking the very important coffee delivery drone in the nation's capital, but I hadn't thought about the fish tank. I'm pleased to say I don't own any fish, but I'll need to start thinking about what tools here I have that could be attacked or hacked by someone. Do we have any questions? We do, Andrew. I'll come to you. But Dave, just before I go to Andrew, when we look at all those things and the path ahead, I guess I probably see that some of those social aspects, for example, is something whole of industry sectors can deal with. And as you've pointed out, Grain Producers Australia and others have been very proactive getting ahead there. We could argue Fodder could think through what some of our social licence issues might be and start dealing with that. But as an individual sort of farmer on the ground, what do you think really individuals, or where do they need to focus their attention in terms of getting ready for this?
It's a really good question, Paula. And when you think of it, now I'm no philosopher, right? I'm a physicist, so I've got about 7 letters short in the title for this, but I'm going to have a crack. So the positive side of social interactions is done as an industry or as a peak body, as a group, collective. But where the negative side can be mostly influenced by is the behaviour and actions of individuals. And so, in other words, as a group, we are charged and have the power to make a positive difference in that social licence pathway. But as individuals, if we take our eye off the ball once, we will damage our industry as an individual. And so what I'm getting at is understand, stay in touch with what's going on, stay in touch with perceptions, you know, look at your market, look at your clients, look at the people around you, your community. They're all things that really matter when it comes to the risk of an adverse outcome. But as an industry, as a sector, absolutely get our act together and start positive messaging.
Thanks, Dave. Andrew Walter, over to you for a question. And I'll introduce you, Andrew Walter from Violet Town.
Well, thank you very kindly, Paul. You should have put in a simple farmer from Violet Town. David, an excellent presentation, and I think you touched on something that I've been pondering for a number of decades, and that is the robotic shearing of sheep. I think the Australian Wool Innovation have been working on this for 2 or 3 decades, and from what I can ascertain, we seem to be further away from getting an outcome to robotically shear sheep than what we perhaps had 10 or 15 years ago. Can you comment more about the expected timeline when we might be able to have robotic shearing and what we need to do to get people on the pathway to get it achieved?
Andrew, great question. You're definitely no simple farmer, and there's a lot of tractor cab thinking going in behind that question. So let me have a crack. So look, at the end of the day, the challenge we've got with robotic shearing is a challenge that we have in the TV industry. You never work with kids and animals. Look at our robotics sector is ripping ahead in plant producing industries, right? In plant-based products. Why? Because you don't hear them scream and they don't move. So when you go back to sheep, right? Now, I've seen trials where, for example, you can have all the analytics going into characterising a shearing operation on a single sheep. And I saw some trial results where they then replayed that operation onto a second sheep. And the sheep has totally different movements, totally different weight, relaxes against the legs, it will present itself. So what I'm getting at is there are so many small, subtle differences from sheep to sheep to sheep that the real challenge is getting a machine that can cope with it all, because the last thing you want is blood off them and they're running around with bits missing. So at the end of the day, the technical challenge is massive, not in terms of the mechanics and the mechatronics, but in terms of the sensory perception, you know, the grabbing the soft fruit, for example, type approach as a sheep moves. So I think that we're still, between you and me, between us all and me, about 10 years out, because we've still got to go a long way to get the machine animal physical interaction piece right. Otherwise, we can strap them down on a bench and run a buzzsaw over them and do the job, but that's not what the industry is going to want. Keep thinking, Andrew, you might have a solution somewhere.
Well, I'm thinking one of the solutions might be, in terms of priority on your highways, in terms of having coffees delivered by drones in Canberra. I think that's really low priority. In terms of having an automated tractor, that's a relatively low priority, because it's much easier for me to get a bloke to drive a tractor on a GPS-guided machine than what it is to get some people into the shearing shed so that I can shear the sheep that eat my high-quality hay that I make. So I think all of the other highways should be blown up, put all the potholes in them, and you should build a super highway to Violet Town with a robotic shearer.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll pass that on. I should add quickly that the drone trial in Canberra was a very clever move, because the pollies are always seeing it. So I suspect the equivalent of that is that maybe we set up a robotic hairdresser somewhere down the main drag and scruff the pollies in and give them all a good wig job every couple of weeks so that they realise what's at stake, what the risks are and what the benefits are. But yes, I totally agree with you, Andrew.
Good on you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. Any other questions for David? Everyone's been quiet tonight. I will just make a comment about the wool industry. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I had the opportunity to have a briefing today on their recent Trust in Australian Wool campaign and the impact it's had globally or from our markets overseas. And I guess I just make the comment, Andrew, that I think that was developed in response to international concerns, and particularly international concerns about muling, and their data showed that our international markets sort of, when they thought about Australian wool, all they thought about was muling. They didn't think about all the good things that the Australian industry's done. So that's been a great campaign to turn that discussion around, but they may need a bit of a campaign before we get your robotic shearer up and running.
Well,
Bruno, welcome.
Question for David, if I might, Paula.
Yes.
And that is, David, you indicated that we've got to wait for 10 years before we get our robotic shearing. A, what degree of confidence have you got in that timeline? And B, what is the pathway?
Okay. Well, A, it was a total guess. And to be honest, every one of those laneways, every one of them, and including the social ones, so unfortunately potholes don't go away, are a clear and present challenge to the development of it. So technology, the whole dang lot of them. So I took a punt at 10 years. Why? Because it's safe and I'll be out there running my own stock in 5 years' time, so no one will be around to hassle me over the answer. But to be honest, I think that it's a really conservative estimate, because it is a really emotive subject as well. Mate, what you want to do out in the back shed with the Victor lawnmower, you probably want to keep doing it, because I don't see stuff happening soon.
Well, for what you're going to suggest is that we need to get some of these New Holland guys that are talking next to do some shearing for a few days and switch their focus from machinery development to doing something in the shearing shed for us.
Thanks, Andrew. Bruno, welcome back tonight after your very thought-provoking speech last week, and we welcome your question.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, David, for taking the photo that I've provided and some of the thoughts that I also thrown on the table last week. Definitely a very good presentation you've done here. So back on what you said with the technology, that is definitely not the limiting factor. Technology will be ready before the regulatory will be in place. Do you think that there is a potential that the regulatory is pushed by the need of getting the jobs done? I'm taking an example of food production, like food picking and some other very intensive, labor-intensive production that will be pushing the regulatory to do something, to draw the lines, and why not we will see automation farming ahead signs here and there, preventing or warning people that there is a new type of farming around the corner. So what do you think about labor intensive and how quickly this may push regulatory to take place?
Okay, good question, Bruno. Thank you. And yes, thank you for your inspiration, by the way, from your last week's presentation, as it was. So, look, COVID has exacerbated the issue, but it was looming beforehand, labour shortage. And so I have it on good authority from one of the authors of the Code of Practice, for example, that was just been released in draft form, that is one of the springboards of them rushing it through. Interestingly enough, we still have that very long dialogue around, bringing in effectively FIFO international workers when we could be really rolling our sleeves up and buying into the robotics solutions. So look, it's imbalanced, but that is exactly the sort of opportunity they've been waiting for and why it's pushing through now. And to be honest, that's only the tip of the iceberg. When you look at the Code of Practice, for example, if you have a farm that's an aggregation, so on our global digital farm in Wagga we're pulling together, we have an aggregation of 7 properties with public roads between. Despite that Code of Practice, even if it was enshrined, we've got to man that operation to be able to pick up that machinery and cart it across a public road 5 metres wide into the next paddock. So there are even that side. And the other issue is, of course, and I didn't mention it because it's a real big ticket issue, is insurance and liability. And the insurance sector now in Australia, they've reported that it's an issue, it needs to be addressed, but I've not seen any action on the ground. In Europe, I have. So I'm really excited about the fact that I think now our insurance sector is waking up, that it needs to be solved. We need products and services tested and validated. So yes, labour shortages will drive it, and without a doubt, and all the power to that working group that developed the Code of Practice, because they're going in hard. But I think that's going to be the tip of the iceberg, because we've got to get the insurance sector on board as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Bruno. Any more questions for David before we let him have a rest? No one? No? Okay, thank you very much, David, for that. If we get any late questions, we will be in touch and send them through to you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
It's now my great pleasure to introduce what I'm going to call Team New Holland. So welcome, Team New Holland. We have on the line, I'm sure many of you know Sune from New Holland, who also presented at our Fodder Festival in March. So welcome, Sune. I'm going to let you chair this session with your colleagues, but also joining us tonight, Henrik and Felix, who are beaming in, I guess is the right word, all the way from Belgium. So we look forward to hearing what's in the New Holland pipeline, and perhaps to revisit some of the topics we've had this evening, not only about what's in the pipeline, but perhaps some of the challenges and issues we need to deal with, including regulation and other things. So good evening, gentlemen, and welcome. And Sune, I'll hand over to you to chair this session. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks to David, that was a great presentation. Yeah, I guess big topics for us, obviously technology and automation are key factors in the industry nowadays. Machines are getting bigger. We rely heavily on those big machines, high performing, high throughput, and that's a bit of the topic I wanted to cover off in my session, and then I'll hand over to the guys in Europe. Just how we go about, you know, from an after sales point of view, keeping these machines up and running. So I'll just see if I can share my screen. So hopefully now you should be able to see my slide. Yeah, so just a bit of a look at behind the scenes, what we're doing from an after sales point of view to try and bolster our, you know, uptime for our products in the field, limit the downtime as much as possible to keep the wheels turning. Just to put it into a little bit of perspective, I just put the first slide up, you know, how quickly technology is changing, and the picture on the left there is actually of me in a small country town called Gan, Maine, when I was 13. Basically, I'd get off the school bus and go home, get changed, ride my push bike out to the paddock. Hopefully it was close by. And I guess most people on the call probably recognise what I was doing, but actually stooking sheaf hay. If I was on a good day, if I kept my head down, I could probably process maybe 5 tonne over a 4-hour period. I'm not quite sure, because I was paid by the amount of sisal twine that went around the sheaf hay. So I wasn't quite sure whether the farmer was telling the truth or not. Put that into perspective, in 2019, we first released or had the first pre-build large square baler here in, or high density large square baler in WA. I had probably one of the best nights baling I could, all the planets aligned, and I processed about 500 tonne worth of hay. So that's, I mean, that's to put into perspective, that's how quickly, I guess, in half a lifetime in the hay industry, how things are changing so rapidly. And I guess the key point really is that we are so reliant on those big products, and we need to keep the wheels turning. So one of the things we've done and recognised in our warehouse in Sydney, which we recognised 5 or 6 years ago, that we just couldn't cope with the vehicle park or the machinery that we have out in the field, bearing in mind that New Holland has been in Australia for decades. And not just New Holland, along the way we've taken on Ford, we've taken on Fiat. The warehouse have to deal with sometimes over 10,000 parts passing through that warehouse per day in peak times. So 5 years ago we introduced some automated carousel system in our parts department. The thought was that when they were installed and up and running, that we probably reduced what took 3 men or 3 people in 1 hour to process a line of parts has been reduced to 1. Not only that, I mean, we haven't reduced numbers in the warehouse as such. We've just moved that resource to other critical areas like forecasting parts and planning parts. In some cases, we have to plan out 3 or 4 years ahead of what's coming. So that was a crucial part of our business, just to speed up the process of how we pick parts and how quickly we can get them out the door. But that still presents challenges to keep machines running. I mean, they've got to come out of Sydney, they've got to get to your farm, and that could be a day or 2 or 3. So we just in the last year or so, we've come up with a new concept to bolster our parts delivery to farm, is by creating some parts hubs. So we have obviously the major parts warehouse in Sydney. We have one in Perth. We have 100 rooftops of dealerships in our network. But even so, we with the technology nowadays, we need to speed things up even further. So we've come up with a concept of having 24 mini warehouses located strategically around Australia. And these parts are generally not parts that you would carry in a dealership. These are the ones and twos, or the what we call critical for function parts, major parts, transmissions, drive lines, engines, those sorts of things. And it's quite good because we can move those around depending on where, what the seasons are. If it's seeding season, we can change out those parts, just depending on where the demand is. And as I got down there, if we can measure it, we can manage it. So we keep monitoring this and where the demands are, and keep shifting these hubs around just to keep those wheels turning. The other important initiative for us is obviously with the technology and automation coming into play nowadays, is we need specialists on the ground. We currently run the normal product training we would do for our qualified technicians, and customer training, all those types of things. But we've realised now that we need to capture, the younger generation coming through, and make sure that on day one that they are trained on all the current products that we offer. So in partnership with the Wagga TAFE and New Holland, we've got a purpose-built facility where we bring in apprentices right around the country now, from Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania, Victoria, and of course New South Wales. 140 students in total this year, where they train on the latest products that we have coming through. Not only that, because they're travelling so far, they have to stay overnight. So we also offer post-trade courses like welding and auto electrics as well. So the guys are really getting a lot out of that. Now I think I'll try and see how our connectivity is, and see if we can wire over to Europe.
Evening, Sune.
Are you there?
Yeah. Do you hear us?
Yeah.
Good. Evening.
I've got you.
Hello, good evening. Also from my side.
Yeah.
Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to see you. We can say good morning to you. It's our evening, but I think better earlier in the day for you. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to what you've got to share with us.
So
Well,
Henrik,
to be here.
Henrik, can you tell us where you are?
For sure, it'll be my pleasure, Sune. So maybe just start with a quick introduction of myself and of my dear colleague Felix. So
here we have Henrik Hansen, who is the global product manager for forage harvesters, and Felix on the left, who is the global product manager for large square balers.
yep.
Great.
So
Let's have a look.
yeah, so what we're doing here today is we're actually we're on site in our harvesting manufacturing plant here in Zettelgem in Belgium, which is the global manufacturing site of CR combines, of large square balers, and of the forage harvester as well. Today we're in the visitor center in Zettelgem. So we have a relatively large building here made out of concrete. So if the line becomes choppy, then bear with us, because that's signaling coming through and all that stuff. So we're here today, and we thought that this would be a good place to give all of you a walk around the large square baler. We'll have a lot of new innovations to show, which Felix is going to run us through in a minute. And I am going to give you a brief update on the forage harvester as well. So a short story on the sites. We've been located here as New Holland in a previous form, although under the name Vliet Claes, since the early 20th century. So in 1906, the site was established. And what I have, I'll try to move myself in front of some of the machinery we have, because we have some legacy equipment here as well, actually, for today. So we have an old stationary threshing unit, which was part of some of the first things that were done here. And then, fortunately for myself, I can just turn the camera a little bit. And we have a 1950s combine that was also produced here while the company was still was still trading under the Claes name. Long story short, now we're in Holland, and today we employ around 2,700 people on site, and we cover 36 hectares of land, of which 16 of those are on the roof. So that's really what we do from a manufacturing point of view. If you see me moving around, is to make sure that you guys get a bit of an impression of the showroom that we're in and of the equipment that we have here as well. So Zettelgem is, as I started by saying, that's our worldwide center of excellence for all harvesting products. What does that mean from a practical point of view? It sounds good. Sune, your slide just dropped off there, just for you to be aware. But what does that mean from a practical point of view? That means that here on sites, we do everything over design, so designing new products, development of new products, manufacturing offset products, and also training. Soon touch base on that as well with the apprenticeship program. And I think we can all agree on the fact that having good training on products, on how to support, to keep you guys moving in the field when you're out doing field work, that's key. Uptime is key, as Sune also said. So that's what we're also fully committed to here on site. We produce combines, we produce balers, and we produce forage harvesters. Annually, we roll out approximately 2,500 combines from the sites, approximately 1,200 balers, and somewhere around 275 to 300 forage harvesters. So I think it gives you all guys a little bit of a flavor of what we're doing here and the scale of the operation as well. Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to touch base on anything else, or maybe we should try to.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
We can see plenty of product there behind you, Henrik.
Yep.
Can you guys speak a little bit about the products we can see behind you there?
Yeah, sure, for sure. I mean, what I'll actually do is I'll just hand over the word to Felix. So Felix, he's globally responsible for the large square balers, amongst other things. And I'm just going to turn the, let's say, the camera around so you guys see Felix and then see a new. Wait, I'll leave the word to Felix. I won't take.
Yeah. Hello from my side. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. So, and I'm going to talk briefly about the highlights of our large scale baler range. And yeah, I think it's important to mention that I think we all aware that the high density segment of large scale balers is growing worldwide, and especially in Australia. To make really dense, heavy bales is key. And that's why the team here, we were quite busy over the last years to develop a complete new range, which we see here. And I will just show you the difference. I mean, we have here behind me those two ranges, the Plus baler, which is still a very important product for us. But here you see the new designed with a new style, high density baler, which is so far, I must say, really very well appreciated in the market. So it's very new. This is first year that we launched the PAC unit, which is also important worldwide. And yeah, so let us talk briefly about the key selling points, the key benefits here, actually. And I just want to point out the most important ones. I mean, we know a large scale baler requires 300, 400, 500 horsepower. I mean, it's really a powerful product. So it's very important to have a straight PTO shaft coming from the tractor, because if something goes wrong there, it's a mess for everyone. So it's very straight drive line, and we achieve this with this mid gearbox. We call it Smart Shift, because there's also a 2-shift in it. So it's a very easy, comfortable startup of the machine. This protects also, by the way, the PTO clutch of the tractor. And we know to get it up to run, it's very important to make it in a decent way, because we always have in mind reducing breakdown time and reducing total cost of ownership. I mean, we really want to focus to have a reliable, durable product where we don't need a lot of maintenance. There will always be something that can go wrong, but this machine is really designed to last. So what else is important? I can briefly open even the front hood. What do you see then here? I hope you can get an idea about this. This is a massive, large flywheel. And just to give you a number, it stores 3.3 times more energy compared to the plus baler. So it's, how do we achieve this? Thanks to the mid gearbox, it's running with a high speed of 1440 RPM. So really fast. And this makes sure that we have a smooth run with a high capacity. And for sure, there's a number of features in this. Just for example, I like it, a smart brake function. So whenever we stop the machine, it's automatically stopped at the perfect moment to guarantee an easy startup. I can talk longer even about this drive line, but I think that's enough to show this is really a unique thing. And we are quite proud that it was even awarded at the Agritechnica last year. Yeah, what else, Henrik, Sune, to talk about? What we receive quite good feedback from the field is also the knotter. I mean, we know every large square bale needs to be tight, strong, solid together, right? I mean, every customer hates if you see exploding bales. That's what we really don't want. I must say, here the team did really good work as well, and the Loop Master knotter was invented. Let's talk about it. A minute. What does it mean? Some of you might have heard the slogan. Well, difficult to see, maybe. Yeah, but
I'll try to.
on top we have the Loop Master. Yeah. Okay. What is the secret of the Loop Master? The Loop Master has 2 main benefits. First, it creates really a loop knot. Why is it important to have a loop knot? A loop knot is important because, I try to show it to you. So the loop knot creates really a loop style knot, which is very robust, and you cannot unroll it. I mean, it's damn robust. So we measured it. It was measured even by Tama, by the twine manufacturer. 37% more twine strength. One benefit. The other benefit is we want to get rid of the loose twine ends. Do you know that with every conventional double knotter system, and I'm not sure if you can see it now, but every normal, regular double knotter system creates 60 centimeters of loose twine ends on every bale, which all goes with a bale and stays in the fodder, or it's going to be disposed somewhere in the field, which is also not anymore the state of the art. So this Loop Master knotter was invented to avoid these loose twine ends. They don't exist anymore. And another side benefit is they don't pile up behind the knotter. So you have also a more trouble-free baling.
Felix, that looks like quite a lot of excess twine there. How much does that come to an Italia when you look at it over a season or such?
Well, in fact, you have on every other balers you have, and we had it in the past too, but not anymore. 12 times 5 centimeter long twine ends. So this brings us to 60 centimeter long twine ends per bale. And then, Henrik, when you do, soon I would say, to make it easy, 10,000 bales a year.
Yeah, I think
it
that's
rolls up to 6 kilometers, right? I mean, that's quite a big thing. And people like it.
That's a lot of twine.
Yeah. And just to highlight, I mean, what else is important? And we will talk about future automations and so on, but still it's key to have a robust machine. And I will try to show it to you here. So we have a very, robust frame. We have a unique exosystem with hydraulic suspension. At the same time, we provide great access to the machine. And last but not least, we have a very heavy density ring to provide enough force, enough pressure to the bale chamber, thanks to the 7 hydraulic thick cylinders. And the bale chamber is also the longest now, with more than 4 meters long, to have really a lot of control over the bale. So it's overall what we are trying in product management to make really the machines more robust, reliable, but on the other side, thinking forward to make it smarter and more automate features. We will talk about this in a minute. That's all from my side for now.
Great, thanks, Felix. Henrik, you wanna run over the forager?
Let's do it.
I mean, it's in the shop as well.
Felix had so many good news on this new big baler, right? But also recently, when was it launched, Felix?
It was just launched a year ago, and now very new in Australia. Also, the first packer machines arrived. So soon, I think you have a nice season ahead of you. Promote this new machine. Huh?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, but that's great news. It's a fantastic baler for sure. So this is going to be great. We're going to look at the forage harvester now. So what I'm going to do is I'll hand over the camera to Felix and just give you a brief walkthrough of some of the key points on the forager. So our forager is, let's say, a mature machine. We've had this machine in the market since 2007, 2008. And I have to say that the current evolutionary edition of the forage harvest that we see here today is miles away from the original FR. I think that's fair to say. I'll take you through some of the key points. I'll just take the laptop. That's all right. Yeah. So what do we have? Well, first of all, we have our wide feed channel, or wide crop flow channel, as we call it, widest in the industry. Why is that? Well, first of all, we believe that a wide but let's say compact pack of material to be chopped is superior. We see that this gives us a very, very consistent chopping quality. Once you've set your length of cut, system takes care of the rest. That's the added value from having this wide design where we have this narrow package of material that we chop. Looking a bit further through the, let's say, the crop flow channel, or the feed channel, as you see here. What I'll do in a minute is soon, I'll just pop open the service area of the forage, okay? Because I think it's a bit easier to see. So what we have inside this space is, first of all, it's easily accessible if you want to get in here and do some cleaning or some also, you need to do a bit of maintenance on all the equipment, disregarding how reliable it is. Eventually, you got to get in here, you got to reach some stuff up, or you got to just dust off the dust cover, right? We already have something installed that automatically does that, but still, it's always good to get in there and check it out daily, at least. Let's say, I'll try to crawl into it. So, in here, we have the CP, or let's say the crop processor unit. And with this, we have a patented system that we call the VariFlow system, which basically enables you to swing your CP in and out, depending on what you're going to chop. So obviously, I mean, you all know we're in corn, we're chopping corn, so we're not doing all that much, but it's a super easy operation. It's all done by a handle over here, and it takes us 5 minutes if you're used to doing it. So that's indeed one of the, let's say, the key points on the machine and how easy it is to use. So yeah, what else should we talk about? Chop quality, and I'll just scroll down from the machine again. And how we measure that stuff. And then maybe soon we can use that as a transition to speak a little bit about the future as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
Yeah.
what we introduced a few years back was the or is the NutriSense system. So that's the New Holland brand name for an NIR sensor. The sensor that we have on the forager is, I'll put it bluntly, it's the best we have in the market. We cover the widest area of crop. We have the highest level of accuracy. And this is what is driving, let's say, traceable nutritional value when we put feed into the stack fermentation. It's all about that traceability. It's all about knowing what you have in the stack to ensure the quality of the feed that we give to our animals, right? So that's, let's say, that's indeed also a key feature we have on the chopper here. Besides that, it's easily serviceable. We've done a lot in terms of development work on changing the position of what we need to do to service it ourselves, filter placement and stuff like that. So that's indeed also making it a machine that, when we look at the, let's say, the maintenance costs, it's good, super reliable, it's good, and it gets the job done, which is what we have to do in the end. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for the overview on the product, Henrik. So I guess from a let's say a connectivity point of view,
yep.
in the wide industry, but also in the forage industry, where do you see this on a global level heading in the future?
I can start, Felix, if you're okay. I mean, what we've done, I can speak specifically for the forage, and I think we've done similar things on the baler as well, is that we are indeed adding more connectivity features into the equipment. So this means adding adding telematics modules to the machine that enables us to read, let's say, to remote read out error codes. It enables us to read out operational parameters in the machine. So that if you're managing a operation, like I can speak for a foraging operation from a distance, you always have an idea about how's your equipment operating, what are you chopping, what's the quality of that. Again, coming back to the, let's say, the traceability, putting that into a big data scope. Personally, and also, I mean, you can maybe underline that if you have an opinion as well, Felix, I know you have. But it's making sure that we're always aware about the quality that we chop, and then we can prove that quality. Yeah. That's key.
And also the documentation comes along with this. I think we will be also forced to be able to document what we do. I mean, talking about balers, for example, I know first customers start already to tag a label to the bales to know, okay, what are the nutrition values in it? What is the moisture level? To have full traceability, where was it baled? To have full traceability about this too.
Just to underline that, Sune, I mean, on the screen here now, if you guys attending, if you look to the left and you look at the bottom page, actually the machines that we produce as New Holland, they're all connected through what we call, internally we call the control room. Well, this can have a little bit of a connotation depending on where you are and how you believe in things. But anyways, literally imagine this, like we can and are supporting our customers remotely when we see that there are pre-traces for potential failures, breakdowns. We're able to do that because we have the connectivity modules applied in the equipment. We have this also integrated within the Settlegem Harvesting Center of Excellence. We have the experts on site, and once we receive an alert from, it could be the chopper, it could be the baler, say, hey, there's something here that doesn't look right, we're able to address the issue up front. That keeps you in the field. That keeps you operational.
Yeah, great. And I guess to the other point on the slide there, I mean, there's obviously we see it today that there is a shift to the automation side And we see it in the CR combines today, where the machine essentially sets itself up. You really don't need to do too much. Where do you think this is heading in the future?
Well, from my end, the future started already, right? I mean, we try to make, and we are doing it today, for example, talking about an implement, a baler, to bring the baler and tractor closer together, not only to have the physical linkage, but also to connect all the sensors, all the informations. So that's why we launched, for example, the IntelliCruise system, where the baler tells the tractor how fast to go. Because the baler knows where my limit is. Hey, the baler knows I can go faster or I should slow down. So this is actually what we are doing today. Similar thing we have on forage harvester, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So we use the current sensors, the current informations, and take benefit of this. But obviously, we are not going to stop there. We need to be forward thinking and need to act even before the crop, for example, is in the machine. And there we see still quite some potential for the future, really to maximize, I call it the installed capacity. Because we all know in perfect conditions, all machines can do tremendous tons per hour and so on. But are we really using this over a long 12, 14, 15 hours a day? Probably not. And there we want to help the operator to maximize the installed capacity.
Just to support Felix, what you just mentioned there, I mean, I think a lot of the automation efforts, Sune, that and also the rest of you folk attending, a lot of the automation efforts that we are indeed doing today, and that we're also looking into in future aspects, is indeed to reduce operator fatigue, so we can have more operational hours in the field, but have the maximum possible output of those hours as well. And let's be honest, it's not getting any easier to find good people. That's we're gonna see. That's at least what we're experiencing from a global perspective. That we see that the let's say the people we have engaged in agriculture, being it in baling, foraging science, whatever it's going to be, is becoming harder and harder to find skilled people there. So whatever we can do to, let's say, to support that and reduce that operator fatigue, to keep people on the stick, so to speak, right? That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, great, thanks. I guess now maybe have you guys got some any questions you want to ask the audience? I guess what sort of things I guess we're interested to know what the Australian farmers want to see in the future.
But for sure, Sune. I mean, let's be honest. In the past, let's say 18 months, being able to go abroad to visit the people who matter, meaning our customers, and being with you guys in the field and seeing and experiencing firsthand how you're doing things, and that's been a bit hard. So for sure, I mean, it would be great to have the opportunity while we're here with you folk to understand.
I mean, one question from my side is, you saw the last slides there about, and I think this presentation before us was very good from David there regarding autonomous robotics. How is it seen really from a farmer's point of view? Are we ready to take this next step, or do you think these are crazy ideas and it's far away?
You're welcome. Anyone from the audience to pop up with any questions.
Andrew Walter, you've got a question. That's so unusual, but please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Paula. A simple farmer from Violet Town in Victoria, Southern Australia, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and great presentation. I guess one of the concerns that I have is that a lot of the new equipment is becoming very computer focused, and when you're out in the middle of a Aussie paddock on a Saturday night and something goes down and it's a computer problem, you can be really quite stuck. Do you think the serviceability of the electronic component of equipment will get easier going forward, or will it continue this pathway which seems to be of more complexity?
Well, that's a valid question, and absolutely. I mean, that's a risk we take. If we put more sensors and whatever on it, there's more risk something goes wrong. And my answer to this is, if we put more computer technology on it, we really need to ensure it is damn robust. I mean, that's the only way. I mean, I think we can't stop, and we don't want to stop the further development. But whatever we do, we need to make it bulletproof. And just to link to the airplanes, I mean, they have quite some sensors and computers in it since quite some years, but they achieved a way to make it really robust. Otherwise, they would have an issue, right? I mean, the airplanes. So whether we work with a redundant system, so that even if one sensor fails, another one takes over. But I get your point, and I absolutely share it. We should not forget to keep the machines very robust and durable. I mean, to keep them reliable.
Yeah. Speaking as well also to part of the focus that we have from a product development point of view is the need to ensure that we have this reliability aspect as one of the key focal points in all developments that we do. Yeah. The last thing that we want to do is go forward and push forward with a new products, whatever it might be, and we're not able to make sure you guys are running in the field. That's all that matters in the end. So as Felix just said, I mean, redundant, at least I speak for the forage harvester here, that we are working with redundancy systems in case something fails.
Thank you. The second question I have relates to the pricing of equipment. We've seen in the last couple of years a big increase in the price of equipment. We've seen iron ore out of Australia go to high levels. It's dropped a lot in the last couple of months. What do you think the pricing of machinery is going to be doing in the next, say, 5 years compared to the last 5?
Honestly, I'm also the son of a farmer, and my father and my brother, they are complaining about prices frequently. So that's also not new to me. Unfortunately, the answer is probably the price per unit continues to go up. But I think we should also not forget that at the same time, usually the machines are getting more productive. And when you then calculate back to what is, for example, cost per grain that you harvest with your combine, or cost per bale, at the end, it is or stable or sometimes even decreasing. So that's my answer. So I think, yeah, per piece it's going up, but per achieved work, it's our task to drive it down.
Indeed, that's also where we work a lot with capacity and efficiency increase to try to offset that. I mean, disregarding how you look at it, there are some inflation aspects that we cannot get about, which impacts all of us in all aspects of life. But yeah, I think I have the same point of view as Felix, also coming from a farming background with a father who was also in let's say in cash crop harvesting. This was indeed also an aspect that we always had to keep in mind. So.
Thanks, Andrew.
Fellas, you just need to come out to Australia and see how it is in an unsubsidised agricultural environment.
Duly noted.
Let's play nicely, Andrew. Pip Robinson, gentlemen. Pip is AFIA's industry development question. Pip, over to you.
Thanks, Paula. Fantastic to talk to you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Sune. And I've come from Sune's part of the world, so I was enjoying your photos of the Stooks, Sune, and a little point for David. Even in the early 90s, we were still collecting our Stook hay with Clydesdales and taking them back and stacking them into their houses ready for the chaff cutter. I've actually got my husband here with me, and he has a question for you guys, so I will let him fire away. It's a technology one.
Just some of the stuff we're doing through the business I work through. Some of the questions that you probably answered for Andrew is, how do you go through with the accessibility for remote support to some of the technology you've got? I know with the business we work with, a lot of our stuff, if we had issues, we can access the computers in the spreader trucks or the other pieces of equipment we use through remote support. Is there a capability with these machines through the computers to counteract this technology problem, to have access for remote support for someone to be able to come in and help fix a computer-related issue?
That's a good. That's a very, very good question. That's a very good question. Short answer is that we have, at least I can speak for the forage harvester, Felix. I'm not into deep on the balers, so you may excuse me there. At least on the forage harvester, we do have this this capability in with the application of the telematics technology we have on the equipment to do let's say remote diagnostics on CAN messages and stuff. So that's the first step. The second step is then to be able to remotely address that and fix it over the air, right? Yeah. That's the second step, and that's things that we're working on right now. At least speaking for the forage harvester. So yeah, I don't know if that was responding and fulfilling enough to your question.
Yeah, I just know we deal with another company, Raven in America, and for our spread technology and rate controlling and all that sort of stuff in our technology in the spreader trucks. We can access those spreader trucks remotely from my office, and I can fix pretty much anything that goes on with those trucks from my office. Is that something you guys could consider going forward with your technology and the machines for guys like your technicians being away from the field at 10 o'clock at night, being able to tap into that on an electronic front to be able to fix the machine for an electronic glitch or pick up a sensor failure or a whatever, like a cutter housing failure or whatever from a remote access?
That is absolutely something we're looking into, yes.
So I just think it's something that will give you a point of difference when you're going forward into the marketplace. If you can have some sort of remote accessibility going forward, I know with our business, clients have gone and said, well, basically, if you've got the access to the technology and you can fix it from being afar, it saves me driving 3 hours to fix the machine for a start, but it gives the client the serviceability and the guarantee that if something does go wrong, it's not going to take 3 days to fix. We can generally fix it within half an hour.
I think we could say we already have the visibility. You just need the person to steer. You need to steer the person in the right direction to fix the issue, right? Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
So I guess the visibility is already there, and just being able to identify or steer that person in the right direction.
That's correct.
I guess, guys, it's Tony here from New Holland. I guess most of you won't know that C&H purchased Raven recently. Raven were recognised as one of the best electronics companies in the world. It was quite a significant acquisition, actually. But so I think we've got a company under our wing now that is at the forefront of this in this area, and we'll see a lot of technology come out of Raven across all our products over the next short period. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks for joining us, and thanks, Pip, for the question. I'm just conscious of time, so we're going to move along. Our next question comes from Lewis Kelly, who is a farmer but also an AFIA board director. Good evening, Lewis.
Good evening. Yeah, fellas, when you're designing and building all this stuff, you're very familiar with how it all works. When we're working the machines here in Australia, you probably only do 100 hours a year, and by the time you've done your 100 hours, you're just starting to get familiar with how the machine works. Yeah, do you find that a problem throughout the world, or do you just use younger blokes on the machines to pick it up quicker?
No, I think that's absolutely that's what we see in all countries, and I mean, it's here at home again. I mean, in springtime they use a sprayer with a big computer, then for just 12 days a combine with a big computer, and then the potato harvester. And I mean, it's each time you need to calibrate yourself back to what it is. So what we are doing is, and I'm not sure if this is really the solution, but first of all, we are trying to commonize, let's say, the user interfaces, that they recognize, okay, the combine works like this, forage harvester like this, baler like this, so that it's easier to navigate through the monitor basically. And the second thing is what we, at least in trying, I think, in most markets, really to do a good training, operator training, driver training before the season starts. Even not only for the first years, but and it's supported by YouTube videos and so on, also for the second and third year, so that you can help, let's say, teach yourself or getting teach by the dealers before the season starts.
Yeah, exactly, Felix. I mean, training obviously is key. Exposure to using the machine is key in a live environment as well, because you can train as much, but it's all a matter of also getting into the field and start using the equipment, where you get the let's say the comfort with operating the equipment, whether it's a baler, it's a forage harvester, it's a combine, or any other kind of equipment. And maybe this is also a good place to mention that indeed these are also some of the points we want to address with the innovations we've got going on in the automation aspect, is to make sure that you can indeed get these, the way it is, these unexperienced folk, someone brand new to the equipment in the cab, and he's able, or she is able to operate it safely, smoothly.
That's the vision.
That's the vision.
Yeah. That's for sure a challenge ahead of us.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's the 4th, 5th, 6th year that things actually start to go wrong in my experience. And yeah, you still only done 500 hours of practice on the machine. So, but look, that's part of the capacity of the machines today, isn't it? Like you're really pumping the material through the machines. But also, what was the weight of the baler? Like, it looks like it's built like the fairly heavy, actually.
It is around about 14.6 ton, and it's massive. A lot of steel is in it. That's also the reason why we increased again the size of the wheel to even reduce the ground compaction. But yeah, it's close to 15 tons depending on the configuration.
It's a big punch.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lewis. We're going to move along. We've got a question from Ashley Williams. Good evening, Ashley.
Yes, hello to everyone. I haven't really got a question, but I've been owning and operating these New Holland big square balers since the early 1990s, from the D1000 days, and I think I've had every model that New Holland have produced except for the big one, which gives me goosebumps to see operating. It's an awesome machine, and I don't know where you go from here, but just keep on going, because they're good machines. Lewis, you got to get on board with the yellow one too.
Thanks, Ashley, for the promotion. We're now going to have a question from Andrew Wiedemann. For those who don't know Andrew, he's actually just stood down as the chairman of Grain Producers Australia, and our first speaker today talked about the code of practice that Grain Producers Australia had been involved in developing. So welcome, Andrew, better known as Weedy to those who know him.
He's on mute.
You're muted, Weedy.
Sorry, I think you've got me now.
Yep, now you're right.
Sorry, I've been on the boom spray, missed the start of your presentation, but I just wondering what has New Holland got in store for us coming to potentially replace a Krone 8-string baler or high density Krone. We run Krones here, so I'm just a bit interested to know what New Holland's got coming, because we've sort of been lagging behind a bit from this local area anyway. I don't really see too many New Holland balers in the Wimmera.
Look, yeah, Felix, how much more can we squeeze out of our 6-stringer? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have
just comparative. I mean, the Krone in this area is pretty much the baler of choice, and that. But I'm just a bit interested to see they do take a lot of maintenance to run. So, just what New Holland's got coming forward. Is there anything in the pipeline that you might have running around the area this year?
Well, I'll comment from my side, and Sune, you can add. But what do we? I mean, we discussed for sure intensively. What are we going to do? What is the density target? What I can say is, honestly, if we would not have had developed this loop knotter, and patented, by the way, so to increase the twine strength by about 30% in total, we were forced to go to a 7 or 8 string knot machine. But thanks to this loop knotter, we could increase the density quite a lot and still keep the six tie knotting system. Because, I mean, really, the Krone machine is also working. We know this, and they were earlier in the business. We need to admit this too. So they challenged us, absolutely. But the response is what we just saw here. I mean, this is achieve really a great weight and still keeping the six knotter. And because I mean, cost is also the twine cost is obviously, if you add two knotters, immediately increase by 30%, right? So that's what we wanted to avoid. Sune, let you comment too.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we have made big inroads with the 6-string, and as you said, the loop knotter does allow us, that stronger twine strength. I guess really, I think the question is, I mean, how heavy do the bales actually have to be? I mean, at some point you're going to be, you will be overloaded on the truck, I guess. I mean, are you looking at more from a cartage point of view, storage, or all of the above end?
Oh no, I'm just interested to see if New Holland's really going to try and compete, I suppose, against that style baler. I mean, everybody's been waiting for somebody as a competitor to come out against Krone's 8-string, because it seems to be the sort of benchmark, I guess, at the moment. The only problem with the Krone is, and I'm a Krone, got 2 Krone balers, is the reliability of the things, and obviously getting parts and backup and service. So, but as I said, there's not too many in the Wimmera. I think Bellevue Trading, I think, are the agents, I think, now in the Wimmera here now. And I've spoken to them before about that, and I thought they had some sort of new prototype they were talking about a couple of years ago, but we haven't heard any more about it. So sorry, I missed the first part of your presentation. I'm probably covering old ground. I apologise.
No. Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Weedy. We're going to wrap this section up. So I've got one question, hand up, and I've got one more spare if anyone's got one. But Mark Lowry, you have a question. Welcome. We can't hear you, Mark, and you're not on mute either, according to me.
Not yet.
That's it. No, you're right. Oh, no, we lost you again. We had you for a minute.
It's a nice sunny day out there, Felix.
It is. I mean,
it's looking decent, all right. We missed out showing one key feature as well, the forage harvest. I don't know, maybe it's
it's time to show you.
Yeah, because in the backyard we got the forage boxes, right? And we thought that a good way to wrap up from our end would be to a couple of the cold ones.
Paul,
Well done, gentlemen. Mark, I think we can hear you now while our Belgian colleagues have cracked their coldie already.
Well, that's a good thing. That's really good. Hearing really good things about the baler, so well done with that. I just noticed in one of your slides is going forward, are you looking at testing the hay, like getting the NIR samples, like, ME, proteins, NDFs and those sorts of things on the run, and the other and tagging the bales as well? Is that somewhere you're looking at going forward?
You mean on the baler or
yes,
forage?
on the baler. Sorry, yes.
Oh, it is. it is something on our roadmap, let's put it like this. And I don't tell too much secrets that we had 1 or 2 units actually on test, because we know the technology quite well from the forage harvester.
Yep.
Oh, and yes, this is something we have in mind.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, I did. I know.
What is the main question to this? I mean, what is the main purpose for, what would be the main reason for you to invest in such a thing? Really to document the protein level, to map it, or what are you looking for?
Moist, just identifying the bale, again, tagging the bale, having that information. So when that hay goes out of the paddock, you know, having scanners on machines, companies have tried to do it, but no one's been successful yet. And identifying that bale pretty much paddock to plate or paddock to farm. So when it's made on one farm, gets delivered to another farm, we can identify that bale. So I just wondered whether that was a focus. I know others have tried to do it. And it's, you know, getting those tags on the bales is a real issue for us to identify that from the place that it's made, stored, and then goes out to a farm.
I mean, what I can say to this, I mean, in the past, we worked also with a company to place really a kind of label on the twine. But yep. as you mentioned, it is not so reliable and robust. Now, I mean, with RFID, there's a new technology available, and you can think about different ways to place a very cheap little RFID tag to the bale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Different ideas are, let's say, you know, thinking loud is woven in the twine, for example, but also other possibilities exist. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's great. Paul, I know you pushed for time, but I had just one more quick question, which, and it's just about the high density bales. Everyone keeps talking about this high density bales and getting more density into the bales. I sell a bit of forage and do things like that, and we're seeing, to the detriment of the quality of the hay when it's going in, the more we put into a bale, it's more difficult to feed out, and the hay doesn't seem to be quite as good the more we jam into a bale. So that's just seen that from my end as getting feedback from farmers saying, oh, you know, no more of them 8 stringers, or there's real heavy ones. You know, at the moment we're overloading our trucks, and I think it's to the detriment of the quality of the feed when it's coming out at the farm. We don't run TMR systems, or we don't run a lot of TMR systems in Australia, so it's literally flaked off, whether it's in a feed pad or out in the paddock. So to the detriment of that with these high density bales. So that was just a comment from me. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure to be here.
Team New Holland, thank you. But Sune, I can't let you go because I just felt you might have escaped a question. So I've got one for you, just going back to your talk. And I'm just curious, I'm going to deliberately use the word kids, but the 140 kids going through the Wagga TAFE to do their apprenticeship, what's their sort of path to market, or what happens to them once they come out, graduate?
No, I guess they're fully. I mean, they're working in New Holland dealerships, but I guess the point was really that in the, you know, those kids that are in Queensland or South Australia or Victoria, if they just go to their local TAFE, then they're probably like me, or maybe not as drastic when I'd done my trade apprenticeship working on a Bedford truck and a 202 Holden engine. I mean, by bringing them into the central location in Wagga, they're working on the specific products that they're going to need to know about when they're qualified. So we're giving them that head start, and I guess it also you know, makes them feel important as well, and they get to mingle with you know, students that are doing in the same industry, I guess, and working on the same product, and they can interchange you know, what things they've seen and done. So I think that's really an important part about it. And I guess it's not only New Holland and Wagga TAFE that are investing hugely in this, is also the dealerships have to, you know, send those apprentices away for a week at a time. So it's huge investment from both New Holland, the dealership, and the Wagga TAFE.
Excellent. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Sune and Tony, thank you both for your involvement, but for organising tonight. And Henrik and Felix, thank you very much for joining us and for taking some time out of your day. We hope you enjoy. It's a bit early in your day to be onto that, can I just say? But on our behalf, enjoy. And thanks so much for being with us. We've greatly appreciated your time.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can stay on, guys, if you want to keep listening. I think we've got a couple of farmers, right, Paula?
We certainly do. We're now moving from our global atmosphere to come back and be very domestic, and it's my pleasure to introduce our first AFIA member, Wayne Bowden, who's based in Gippsland or Yarram in Victoria, to give us a bit of an update on what the season's looking like in his world and some news from down there. So welcome.
Good evening, Paula. How are you tonight, and everybody? Yeah, it's been an interesting night looking at what's going to be available in the future, ideas of where we're going to be going. I'd just like to talk about where we are down here this year. It's as everybody knows, we've gone through a fairly long dry spell over quite a number of years. I've just got a couple of photos here of how wet it is now. We're actually very wet. Some may say it's probably the wettest we've been. Some people have said ever, but I don't know about that. But there's a slide picture there now of a paddock we sprayed a few weeks ago, and 10 days ago it was pretty wet. And then we've got some other slides there. That one on the left-hand side there, that's probably 30 kilometres from here, and you can see the sand that was drifting across there 2 years ago, and now the picture to the right, there's subclover and ryegrass growing in there. That's it hadn't even been resown. It's just come up in that particular paddock, so that's pretty good. As for where we're at season-wise here now in my particular area, Yarram, we're looking fairly good, I suspect, in the future, provided we keep getting some showers of rain. And I know saying that is going to make some farmers probably cringe because we're that wet at the moment. But as everybody knows, you can have all the rain you like, but if you don't get it at the right time, you'll get nothing out of it. So, you know, we're wet now, but we've got to keep getting some moisture to keep the surface from crusting over so we can get the growth in the spring. We're probably a little bit different to people up north that are growing crops and things like that. We're only, mainly harvest pasture down here. We'll be moving into crops of maize and fodder crops for grazing when we can get onto paddocks fairly shortly. I think I've been doing this now for 32, 33 years, and one of the things that I've noticed in that time, you know, when we first started, we were doing no jobs until we got to the middle of October, whereas the last 20 years, 15 to 20 years, we were doing silage mid-September. We were starting into silage, and I think everybody was getting used to that theory of getting into it early and having a longer season, which works out. But when that happens, you don't have the moisture to keep things going. So I'm not too fussed about the fact that we're not doing anything yet. Whereas the last 20 years we would have been doing something, we're not doing anything yet. But when I go back to the early years that I was doing it, we were always having good seasons. So I think there's a little bit of concern around it at the moment. People are thinking it's too slow getting going, but I think it will turn into a good season, hopefully, down here. So, yeah, I don't know what else I can tell you about what's happening down here, except for it's still very boggy outside.
Thanks, Wayne. In your sort of 3 decades in the business, what would you say has been the greatest positive change that you've seen, and what do you sort of see as the biggest challenge or nut to crack going forward?
Well, I think that the best change I've seen is in our industry is going forward into the automisation of things, or auto steer, auto section controls, and all those sorts of things. Like what we can do now on a farm compared to what we could do 30 years ago is amazing. How we can control seed placement, seed and fertiliser placement, spraying capabilities, just little things like if you've got a 100-hectare paddock and you're running a 6 metre whatever, and you're overlapping or underlapping by, I don't know, 200 mil, or sometimes it could be 300 mil or whatever, and years gone by, you try and eliminate all of that and you think nothing of it. But if you've got a fairly long paddock and you're overlapping and you have to do an extra run, well, put that into the equation of how much extra fertiliser you've used, how much extra seed. And if you have to err on the side of caution to make sure that doesn't happen previously, well, that means you're not getting the prescribed amount of fertiliser and seed in that you want to be getting in. It might sound like you're close enough, but we're running down the road in this industry that close enough's not good enough. You know, we need to be making sure that we're doing things properly and getting everything done right the first time. Having said that, when you're dealing with Mother Nature, things can go wrong. So where do I see it going? I've got big hopes to where it's going. I would like to see agriculture step up into, step up into the perfectionism that's in the rest of industry, you know, as in you go and buy a new car, you get a new car with 4 new doors, 4 new tyres. You know, we need to, there's too many people out there that think, oh, rough enough's good enough. And I just don't think that's where we should be striving. We should be going for the best of the best all the time. That's my opinion, but
I'm smiling, Wayne, because I had a very similar conversation with an AFIA director about this today. But can I just ask you, what do you think is the sort of impediment to get us there, or you know, what's stopping us getting to that point you'd like to see us at?
Well, somebody touched on it before about subsidisation in other countries. You know, we've got to compete with the rest of the world, and we're doing a very good job at competing with the rest of the world. But there's a lot of dollars that are needed to push us along further, and it's very hard to convince some people that they need to spend that dollar to get that little bit extra out of it, when they can just sit back and say, well, yeah, but I know I'm going to get this by not doing anything extra. If we could take, it all comes down to dollars. It really does. And the marketplace, that's my opinion. I think we're sitting in a good position to go forward now. But we need to be making, everybody needs to be making money out of what they do. Getting labour, that's been touched on tonight too, that's always going to be a big issue to keep things going. You know, there's farmers that we deal with that they thought that it might be a good option to have a lot of their own equipment in-house, but they can't get operators either. So they're going back to getting contractors to do the work, because we still have trouble getting contractors too, getting labour as well. But, you know, if we can keep them happy all the way through the year and offer a full-time position right through the year to support their families, you can hang on to the drivers. But sometimes the farmers can't do that because they don't have the work to keep them going all the time.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Lewis, you've got a question.
Yes. Yeah, Wayne, you're saying about what happens, where do we go? Over the last few weeks, we've been listening to a lot of these speakers, and I think the conclusion that we can all come to is that perhaps our limitations are our imagination. If we dare to dream or think through it a bit harder, I think there's a long way we can all go. More of a comment to what you were saying, or supporting your comments. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like Hayden, and he's my son and works in our business. We've got a list a mile long of things that we want to do and we'd like to try and do. And yeah, look, the sky's the limit. The imagination's the only, you just follow your imagination. It comes back to dollars to keep it going.
Thanks, Wayne, and thanks for joining us and contributing. Our last presenter or speaker for the night is Caitlin McRae, who's joining us from Temora in New South Wales. So welcome, Caitlin, and apologies we're running a bit behind time, but we look forward to hear about what's happening in your area.
No, thanks. Thanks for the introduction, Paula, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to have a chat. There's been some awesome presentations and I've definitely learned a fair bit. As Paul said, I'm Caitlin McRae. I'm the eldest daughter of Simon and Marita McRae, but I also work as an agronomist for Nutrien. I'm pretty lucky in this role. I get across a fair bit of country in the southwest slopes, as well as get some hands-on work at home when I can with mum and dad. So bit of a recap and a bit of a look forward into what we've got going on in this district. The start of 2021 seemed to roll around pretty quickly after a very busy hay and harvest last year. At the start of the year, we had some big crops last year that ended up lodging a bit. So we had some serious feed and grain left on the ground. So that left some perfect environments for some little critters, the mice, to start running around hot in some areas. So some areas weren't too bad, but they definitely built up, especially anywhere with that had badly lodged crops, and any barley stubbles seemed to end up with heavier infestation. So April rolled around and we'd had some very nice summer rainfall events. So we were pretty much sitting at about 302 mils coming into our sowing season in April. So things were looking pretty good. We jumped into sowing pretty quickly, and many started to try and burn, and a lot of baiting happened early on to try and drop our mice numbers a fair bit, especially around hay sheds and anywhere, again, that had grain bags or anything on the ground. There was a fair bit of baiting we had to do around those ones. So there was some that got hit a bit harder than others, and there was actually some like crop loss, especially any early sown canola. So there's a photo there of a patch where we had some pretty heavy mice that wiped out some nice canola, but a bit of resowing there and it all kicked away fairly well. So April meant there was no rain for us in this area, so it was a staggered germination depending on whether you went into moisture or sort of sat it just above. So May rainfall was very warmly welcomed, as we tried to get some crops picked up and firing away. So again, we rolled into winter really quite cool, and I think we went 7 weeks there where we had about more than 5 mils every week. So on some heavy country, it started to get very, very wet very quickly, and we actually couldn't get onto a lot of crops to give them that nitrogen that they needed. So that sort of meant for us, by the end of July, most areas had our yearly average of about 500 mils. So definitely meant that it was very wet, but also looking really good with great yield potential. So the weather cleared up a bit and we were able to get on and really push the nitrogen. So we've got some pretty high biomass crops hanging around this area that are very well set up nutritionally, and hopefully we can get them through the end. So luckily, again, August, September, more good news, a bit more rains come through, and it's sort of kept the moisture profile pretty full, even with the days as they started to warm up. The crops have just been going absolute gangbusters in this area at the minute, but we've still got a way to go. There's some, very large yield potentials. There's definitely some areas that are probably going to be looking for some rain, believe it or not, in about 20 mils, just because of how big the crops are. But there's definitely on the heavier side of town that if they got 30 mils, we'd be looking at the dreaded potential wet harvest that they're sort of talking in the next, in the following forecasts. We've got a lot of big crops in the area. I think looking at grain prices and yield potentials, I think a fair bit of that's going to get pushed into harvest more so than hay. I think just on the proviso that, yeah, the price of some canola sitting around that 850 and wheat's up around that 300, and they've been fed very well. So I think most will try and pull it through to harvest, and just the matter of actually getting it dry, we can cut it, but I just don't see in some of these areas how we're going to get these crops dry. But in saying that, we've got some really good pulse crops around, so some vetch and some really good lucerne clover. So if the weather permits us, I think there will be a fair bit of that potentially hit the ground to fill up some sheds again as well. So we've been taking on in the last month a bit of rust pressure, and disease is probably our biggest thing that we're fighting off at the moment, just with such good conditions around. But we've been doing a lot of preventative sprays for that, and just hoping and praying that Mr. Jack Frost doesn't pop his head up and really smack us where it hurts in the next, as we've got heads out at the moment, flowering away in most of our wheat and canolas well and truly into it. So just holding our breath and just hoping that he plays nice, which they've played nice all season, really. I think we've, I don't know, I haven't been around all that long. Everyone's probably got a lot more experience than me, but it's definitely, I'm very lucky to be sort of around this season and looking how awesome everything is. So I think it's definitely shaped up to be an awesome season in this area. There's a long ways to go yet. We've still got to get it off. We won't count the chickens until everything's in the silo and in the sheds. But I think overall, we're pretty happy in this area with how things are panning out.
Thanks, Caitlin. That was an excellent summary. I'm curious just to decide, though, how impacted, if at all, do you think the area has been as a result of COVID? Do you think that's had a substantial impact on people, or it's been more a business as usual approach?
I definitely think that we're probably on the luckier side in this neck of the woods. It's definitely taken its toll in some spots. We've been through a very short lockdown compared to Melbourne and Sydney, but look, being in the agricultural industry, we're very lucky, being essential. So we've still been able to sort of keep business as usual, but just start to, you know, take on board the all the COVID sort of rules for keeping safe, but yeah, business as usual really, which is very lucky.
Good, and fingers crossed, as you say, that Mother Nature and Jack Frost and all those people, all those influences behave themselves, and we end the season on a good note. Thank you, Caitlin, for your time tonight. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's now my job to wrap everything up. So just a reminder, and I feel like I sort of need to do a big drum roll, but this time next week is our final forum, Fodder Forum number 5, but the excitement and the drum roll comes because it's combined with AFIA's 2021 annual general meeting. So for all our members, we hope you've registered to attend, downloaded and read the AGM papers that we've put together for you, because I think you'll find those quite informative. So we look forward to seeing everyone next week at 7 p.m. I think I also need to give a reminder to everyone to have you don't even need to take your camera out, have your phone in your back pocket and make sure you enter the AFIA photo competition, because we're looking forward to putting together our 2022 calendar. Thanks tonight to our speakers, to David Lamb for the Food Agility CRC, who kicked us off and gave us quite a few things to think about, or maybe even put some jobs on our list in terms of automation. To Team New Holland, Sune, Henrik and Felix, thank you very much, especially to our European colleagues for joining us tonight. And to Wayne and Caitlin, thank you for giving up your time to tell us about what's happening in your region. Stay safe, everyone, for the next week. Reminders, as always, don't forget to get your jab. And just, I think he's still on the line, but Frank McRae, Director of AFIA, I have it on good authority that Orange comes out of lockdown at midnight, so we certainly don't want to see you on the news tomorrow doing burnouts in Summer Street when you break out at midnight. But all the best, everyone. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Good night and thanks.